compared to last year. So it's not a surprise that pessimism exists today when you look at the macroeconomic factors, inflation, rising interest rates, and the volatility and uncertainty that rests in the marketplace consistently around the globe right now. Because that pessimism is fairly consistent around the world on the economy as well as across multiple sectors. The interesting thing is geopolitics is now equally playing a part of that concern. And it's well beyond the China-US stuff that we've talked about previously. It's going to what's happening in the Middle East. It's going to what's happening in the EU. And can we actually move forward and hold strong?
Presented by Panasonic. Create today, enrich tomorrow. Co-presented by Reliance Digital. Technology se rishta jodo.
Hello and welcome. The biggest buzz at Davos at the World Economic Forum and in conversations across the world is about the transformative possibilities held by artificial intelligence, brought alive most recently and most starkly by ChatGPT. To understand how this could potentially impact governance architecture in India and elsewhere, we're joined at the India Pavilion at the World Economic Forum in Davos by a very heavyweight panel of really sharp technocratic experts. Allow me to introduce first India's Minister for IT, Telecom, Railways, Ashwini Vaishnaw. Welcome, sir. Flanking him, we have the President of Microsoft, Brad Smith. Thank you so much for your time. And one of India's sharpest CEOs, winner of the Business Today Best CEO Award, Rajesh Gopinathan from TCS. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start by asking you, Minister, in the conversations you've had at the World Economic Forum, how do you assess the prospects of artificial intelligence helping move digital infrastructure and digital governance into the next gear?
Thank you, Rahul. India has adopted digital technologies like fish takes water. Each and every aspect of our economy is today digitalizing at a very rapid pace. We believe that India's stack, which has made such a fundamental difference in people's lives, empowering them, giving them the new tools, giving them new technological, new access, that will be further strengthened by AI. And one of the quickest wins is we integrated our Bhashini language AI tool, which translates from one Indian language to any other Indian language, real time, spoken, text, everything. We integrated that with ChatGPT, and very good results we are seeing. Somebody in hinterland of India speaking can ask a question in Hindi to ChatGPT. ChatGPT finds the answer and actually gives the answer back in spoken Hindi. So that kind of possibility is there. Yes, there will be many more serious applications like in cybersecurity, in healthcare, in multiple sectors. Probably as AI grows, this is the time to be curious, time to make sure that we are open-minded, time to make sure that we are reflective upon what AI can do for the society.
Mr. Smith, artificial intelligence is most often been something held out in a distant future. A lot of what Microsoft has been saying and doing recently, especially through ChatGPT, seems to suggest that that future is here, it's now. Can you give us a sense of what you think are the most obvious and the most powerful applications of artificial intelligence in the manner in which countries are governed?
Well, the first thing I would say is I think you're right. The truth is we really started to recognize last year as we worked with OpenAI, and it really is this relationship that we've been building for several years, that we would see in 2023 advances that 2 years ago we would have said we wouldn't see until 2033. So it's as if the future has been pulled forward by a decade. And I think the first thing we should recognize is that people will develop creative uses for this that none of us have yet imagined. That's the first thing we learn every time technology moves forward in this way. I will say this, I think this is an enormous tool for what I would call critical thinking and creative expression. Take the example you just heard. Someone has a question, they can go get an answer to it, even if the answer right now is in a language they do not speak. That opens up the opportunity for people to just think and learn more about the world. The other thing that, of course, everyone is experiencing when they use ChatGPT is it's this enormous tool for expression, for creative expression. Now just step back and say, is there anything in human life, in any country, that doesn't involve some level of critical thinking or creative expression? The answer is no. So now we recognize this will permeate almost everything.
Rajesh, when you look at tools like ChatGPT and more largely the use of artificial intelligence, where do you see a company like TCS be able to use it, not just in your own operations, and because you're a partner to the Government of India and so many applications and being part of the Indian digital stack, how do you see this help accelerate the speed of digital transformation?
Rahul, as the Minister said, what we have seen is that the moment a new digital technology is made available, its rate of adoption, both in society as well as in industry, has always surprised us. The extent of technology leverage has been continuously increasing, but we still believe that we are at the very early stages of truly using technology to transform many of the value chains in multiple industries and in other social areas. So any such tool that actually accelerates that technology adoption process, I think is a huge benefit, net benefit to society, and we need to understand it. We need to be able to incorporate it into our service delivery. But I'm very optimistic and positive about what it can do in terms of its transformative power.
Brad, you spoke initially of the positive impact of artificial intelligence and its role in society and governance. How worried are you about the negative impact? I was reading about a tool which Microsoft itself is developing, which can, within 3 seconds, start replicating somebody else's voice. Now, in an Indian context and globally, there's so much fake news already. Now imagine Minister Vaishnav's voice saying he's just become best friends with his prime opponent, and all kinds of things can happen before he comes out and clarifies. That story's already gone viral. Where education is low, people's desire or the chances of them believing in fake news becomes that much higher. Some of these technologies could have a very deep dark side.
Well, and I think that is also an important point. We need to go into this with our eyes wide open. It's probably good that it's 2023, and we've seen over the last 20 or 30 years that fundamentally every technology tool can also be turned into a weapon. Yeah, and there's a reason that our research division did that research project, announced the results of it, and did not release the tool so that other people could misuse it. So in the first instance, I think all of us who are in the business of creating these technology tools need to build on the work that we've been pursuing for 5 or more years to ensure that they're used ethically, responsibly, legally. And then I think the other thing we need to recognize is that this technology likely will be weaponized by some. Every technology always is. But we can then use the technology itself to defend against those kinds of abuses. One scenario that is being discussed in a number of countries right now is frankly a concern by teachers that students will use this to cheat on their papers. Well, there's a student, a former Microsoft intern who's now a senior at Princeton University in the United States, who used ChatGPT to create an application to detect when papers are being written by ChatGPT. But that is actually a lesson that comes from cybersecurity as well. You use the technology to increase defensive protection, and that will be very much a part of this.
But high schools in New York have already banned ChatGPT. Some of them concerned about the prospects of this being used in homework, and especially in a society like India where rote learning is a key part of education. Unfortunately, you can be picking out answers very, very, very easily through such tools.
And the one thing I would say, and I'll take the phrase we were talking about before, look, we should all be curious, not judgmental. We should not minimize any problem because we will need to experience how serious it is. And at the same time, I would say we should not give up on our ability to solve it. I'm reminded of a quote from a teacher who said, this technology is a crutch. And the problem with the crutch is that people can keep using it more and more and more, and they lose the muscles they need to walk. Now, this was a very successful teacher of the year where she lived. But she said this in 1984, and she said it about the calculator and what it would do for students' skills in math. So let's all use the opportunity to learn together before we come to
But
judgment.
Minister, when it comes to weaponization of technology, often lawbreakers are one step ahead of law enforcers. And the prospects of hackers, dark states, deep states using ChatGPT and similar artificial intelligence technologies against national interests is very high. How concerned are you about this?
See, whenever new technology comes, whether you go 100 years back and when the transition happened from horses to cars, or when you go transition happened from the old type of transistors to digital, transitions happened when internet came, transitions happened when the example that Brad gave about calculators. Whenever such technological transitions happen, there would be disruptions, there would be uncertainties. We in the government should be very reflective, we should be very open-minded. We have to make sure that the innovation economy which India has built up so assiduously, we have 100 plus unicorns, that innovation economy sits comfortable, that keeps on moving forward, while all the societal harms that we see are properly regulated. We will have to be very thoughtful in this. We cannot have a very generalistic kind of statement or generalistic kind of regulation. We'll have to build up the regulation step by step based on the experience. That's the way we should go. Then we are able to harness the technology to our benefit while protecting the society from its harms.
Where does this leave search? More specifically, Google search. And is this really Microsoft's Brahmastra? Brahmastra is this weapon from Indian myth and history to try and kill Google?
Look, I don't know enough about Indian myth and history to opine on that. Nor am I here to offer a prediction about the future of Google.
Ask ChatGPT.
I would be very curious. Let me just say, I think that we are going to find that this technology is transformative for what it can do for people. People who want to learn about what's happening in the world. Stay tuned. More is coming.
Are you concerned about the prospects of what this could do for education, especially in an Indian context? By the time you build a supporting ecosystem to try and ensure that those tools which you spoke about used by Princeton professors are available in India, a lot of students could be using this en masse.
I think the tools will get propagated very rapidly. I don't think that the way Indian population adapts technology, I think that's phenomenal. I don't think we will be lagging behind. Yes, there will be impacts where we still don't know what the impact will be. The impact has to be properly seen, experienced, studied, and we keep taking actions. It will be a very, very fluid situation. As Brad said, we have to be curious. We should not be judgmental. We should be open to technology. Our country has shown that being open to technology can be really, really transformative. So we should be open to technology. We should keep learning as we walk.
While the period of the pandemic saw a massive tech boom, now there's a lot of talk of a tech winter. And I want to ask Brad Smith first about, because Microsoft announced 10,000 jobs being retrenched just yesterday. How do you see the prospects of the tech winter, and how does this impact your outlook towards a market in a country like India?
Well, I don't know that I would use the phrase tech winter, even if this is the first time I've ever been with people in India looking at snow out the window, as we are here in Davos today. I do think that across the technology sector, at least on the west coast of the United States and a bit more broadly, the industry hired more people than it has found the growth in the last year to continue to support. So, we joined the ranks of others, and yesterday said we were going to be reducing our employee count by about 5%. Now, even after that, even after we're done, we'll have more employees working at Microsoft, in July of 2023 than we had in July of 2022. So, that's more like spring or fall than winter. We'll have to get in balance one of the things that Satya Nadella said yesterday when he sent an email to all of our employees is really we've got to think about two things simultaneously. In the short run, because you always have to manage through the short run, we need to align our resources with the revenue opportunity. But it goes back to the bigger topic we're having here right now or across Davos. This is an important moment in the history of technology, especially for a company like Microsoft, for the role we are playing as a first mover on artificial intelligence. And so part of what we're doing is ensuring that we're putting our resources in the right places.
Does this hold the prospect, Mr. Gopinathan, in a longer term of the need for lesser techies as well? It's been spoken of for a long time. There have been multiple reports about freshers getting job offers, not from any one particular company, I'm talking about the industry in general, and then not being onboarded or that being the onboarding process being delayed for several months. How concerned are you that with tools like ChatGPT being able to solve for most problems, that impacts employment as we know it at this moment?
Oh, not at all. If you even look at the United States, which is far ahead in the technology curve, by various estimates, the total technology talent required by the industry versus availability, there's a gap of something like 3 million. So we are in a hugely supply constrained situation, and this is to execute the projects that are currently envisioned. As I said, the extent of technology leverage in value chains is still at a very early stage, and industry after industry is getting disrupted with the extent of technology.
But that also requires coding skills and technical skills of a very high order. What do you think ministers like Minister Vaishnaw and the government should be doing to try and equip young professionals with those kind of cutting-edge skills which companies like Microsoft or TCS would require?
The history of Indian IT, supported so strongly by the government, is actually a testament to the fact that we continuously keep on upgrading to whatever is the new technology challenge that comes about. And we have always demonstrated that ability to constantly learn. And one thing that, if anything, and Satya Nadella keeps talking about it, the one thing that differentiates humans and what's critical that we need to nurture is our ability to continuously learn. If you believe that, the old style, that you learn once and then you will apply it for the rest of your life, that world is gone far beyond.
Yeah, if I could jump in on this, speaking as an American who has a leadership role at a global technology company, India has the most valuable natural resource in the world for the next 3 decades. It's this extraordinary number of talented engineers and data scientists. And AI is a tool that will make everyone more successful, frankly, will reduce the less probably rewarding aspects of creating software, will create an opportunity and need for everybody to grow their skills and get better. But look, what I see, what Saudi Arabia is to oil, India is to engineering. And the world of the 21st century is being built with this natural resource. And the fact that so many young Indians are going to university, are getting engineering degrees, are learning data science, keep going. The world needs you, and this is one of the most important economic engines, frankly, in the history of economics.
But a lot of that data science is being taught in universities in the US and elsewhere. You've yourself been the beneficiary of a high-level education. Given the state of India's higher education, for the large part, many would say a country like China has done much more in developing global world-class educational institutions than India has. A lot of the likes of Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Arvind Krishna have made their names outside India.
I wouldn't accept that point. Indian education system is so well appreciated all over the world. The universities, some of the institutes that we have, the IIT system, many of the other institutions are really, really world-class. Research is at cutting edge. Collaboration with global educational institutions is real-time. Each and every aspect of education we are constantly collaborating, and education is not zero-sum game. It is always a win-win when you collaborate with MIT. IIT Kanpur has a collaboration with MIT. MIT wins, IIT wins. Both win. So that is the kind of approach we have followed. And the new education policy of Prime Minister Modi ji, that actually reinforces that direction and gives much more flexibility to the education system. For example, 5G. We are setting up 5G labs in close to by now about 60 universities. So all these students are now getting an opportunity to see what 5G is, experience it, see what different use cases can be built. When they come out of the university, they are ready for the new technological leap. Semiconductor, 85 universities we have already set up the semiconductor labs. AICT has already curated a new course. So it's a very, very dynamic situation, and we are very glad that the new education policy gives us that flexibility.
And if I could just add to that, there's two things that I think are really interesting and important for people to think about. The first is the future of engineering and data science. A great engineer or data scientist in the future is going to be someone who has also studied and learned something from the social sciences, from the humanities. And the second is especially the role that India plays as really the software and engineering powerhouse for the world. It's really good to have people who've spent some time in the rest of the world. And by the way, there's going to be more jobs in the tech sector for people who come out of the social sciences. To serve people with artificial intelligence, we need to bring people together in a multidisciplinary international way so we all understand the people we're working to serve. All of these things, it's an extraordinary asset for India. And by the way, you're going to see more people in the future who may have grown up in the United States. They're going to be going and getting a graduate degree in India as well. That's the world of the future.
As the fault lines between China and the United States intensify, more and more countries are putting up tech trade barriers. The United States encouraging very strongly for semiconductor manufacturing to come to the US mainland. India also, Minister, trying very hard through the likes of Vedanta, Tatas and the others to get semiconductor manufacturing to come to India. The opinion in Davos seems very starkly split. Many say even if you build semiconductor foundries, these are going to be previous generation foundries and you're not going to be producing cutting edge chips. How confident are you that apart from everything that we do on the software side, on the hardware side, India could play a role at the cutting edge of technology?
People should see that India has close to 25% of the global semiconductor design talent. 50,000 plus semiconductor design engineers working in the country. No other country can claim this kind of semiconductor talent pool. Now, who designs the cutting edge technologies? It's these engineers. Once we set up the fab ecosystem in the country, our ability to leap from a legacy node of 45 nanometer or 28 nanometer all the way to 14 and 15 is very, very rapid, first. Second point, the world is changing. The demand for legacy nodes, which is 28 nanometer and above, is actually today close to 60% of the total demand. And why is that? That's because of the rapid use of semiconductors in electric vehicles, in telecom products, in power electronics, and practically every consumer electronic item that we see. So those who say that, okay, there is market only for 2 nanometer or 4 nanometer are not saying the correct thing. The market for higher nodes is today as big as the market for compute semiconductors. Mr.
Gopinathan, I'm curious to know from you your sense of the prospects of India throwing up a TCS or an Infosys or an HCL on the hardware side. The government's trying. Do you think the incentives that have been rolled out and the global tailwinds which kind of encourage manufacturing to come to countries like India because of a China plus one concern that most global companies have in their supply chains, do you think that's doing enough, or will this be more talk than action?
Rahul, if you will excuse me, your skepticism on our industry is actually rather quaint considering it's almost 20 years and we export about 250 billion in software. So, it's fine. It's the job of the media to be skeptical, but I have no doubt whatsoever on what Minister Vaishnaw just said. There is absolutely no reason why we should not be able to establish the same level of leadership in hardware that we have in software.
See, Rahul, this iPhone 14 is made in India, right? The entire supply chain is now shifting to the country. The hardware manufacturing, what you're saying, I mean, 10 years back, it was negligible in the country. Today, we have $87 billion worth electronics manufacturing in the country. And it is growing at a double-digit CAGR. Industry is very upbeat. The policies are very stable. The response that government is giving under Prime Minister Modi ji's leadership is very, very proactive to the industry. I think we are going to have a very great story. And this is not because the people want to simply diversify away their supply chains, but also because of the design capabilities that Indian engineers have.
Okay, let's get a third-party perspective, and I like the passion that Rajesh brings. Most of what we've seen so far on the cutting edge has been on the software side. You're confident that Indian companies could do this on the hardware side as well. How do you see this? Do you see this leading to a greater tech fragmentation with two tech blocks emerging, China, Russia on the one side, countries like India, United States on the others? Is that inevitable in some senses?
There's definitely a certain decoupling, even if it's not complete, between the United States and China. I mean, I just think that's indisputable in the world today, and then that has ramifications for other places. The one ingredient that India also has in its favor that is extraordinary is not just talent and economics, but trust. And I think India's strength in building a software economy that people trust can translate into hardware in addition to all of the other factors. And one of the things that we find that we constantly focus on at Microsoft is trust is something that takes a long time to build. It's easy to lose. And so you just have to stay focused on it every day. But what impresses me, among many of the other things about the Indian technology economy, is not just the trust that has been built, but the government's commitment to sustaining it, the commitment of Indian technology leaders and businesses to sustaining it. I think that puts all of the ingredients together. Now, at the end of the day, you need a little bit of luck to really take off, but you build your own luck. And I think India has put in place all of the ingredients to do that.
When you compare the digital tech infrastructure built by India over the past several years with your experience in other markets across the world, where do you think India stands when it comes to the tech digital infrastructure?
Well, the thing that I would say is that in my own opinion, and this I'll qualify it by saying I haven't had the opportunity to go back to China since before the pandemic, but have pretty much been everywhere else in the world. I think India moved farther during the pandemic than any other country. And the India stack is the best example of that. It is the world's leading example by far of digital public goods produced at scale. Solving some of the biggest problems that every society worries about, payment systems and healthcare, of course, supported by these stacks around identity and presence. So this is propelling, I believe, India into a new technology era. Not just having people in India write the code, bring the intellectual thought leadership and energy into producing what the world needs, but now creating technology that itself will move around the world and serve the world well and serve India in return. So, for everybody who was part of it, you put some very difficult years to very good use.
What more would you like to see, Mr. Gopinathan? Because when we're in Europe, for example, a lot of what we take for granted back home, and not just those who are present at the World Economic Forum, but even the pakoda walas, the rickshaw walas, the thela walas, what they can do very quickly isn't as obvious or simply done in many countries of Europe. Where else do you think the government should be using technology to further improve governance?
It's not about where else it is. The themes are very well understood. Healthcare is very important. Infrastructure is important. Education, taking it further down deep into the society, that's very important to make sure that the level of demand that we see, we get the supply to actually manage that. So it is not about what more. There's so much more to be done on the same themes, and we have infinite capacity if we can unlock it and if we can make sure that we systematically stay with it.
Minister, what's the buzz that you take back from Davos? is India likely to be one of the beneficiaries of a global decoupling from China or the prime beneficiary? Why I ask is because oftentimes in the past it's been said that this is India's moment, and yet the plane remains on the runway, doesn't quite take off. As Brad said, it could really be a hockey stick. Is it going to be a hockey stick or it will be a flat curve?
I think one thing which people have really understood is that the thoughtful strategy that Prime Minister Modi ji, his actions, his decisions, the choices he made on economy, on the pandemic, on technology, all these choices are very well understood. These are the choices which really bring a secular growth, 6 to 8% moderate inflation over the next entire decade. So I think this is going to be a consistent growth period, and which is what people realize when I speak to many senior policymakers here. People understand the potential of India in a significantly better way, and people do realize that this is not a one-off. This is a real consistent growth period for the country.
Do you see this, Mr. Smith, as a situation where it's a winner-take-all market through what Microsoft has been able to achieve with ChatGPT, or do you see the likes of Google and even in China, through their use of artificial intelligence, be able to push back and make it a more even keel field? Oftentimes, when the platform gets set initially and there's rapid adoption, it's very difficult for others to play catch up.
I don't see this as a winner-take-all market. I do think that there's going to be formidable competition, and people are going to participate at many different layers. But even if you just take, what everybody's talking about at this Davos this year around so-called large language models or foundational models, I have no doubt that there are great talented people who were at DeepMind, acquired by Google. They will be a formidable and impressive participant. I have huge confidence in what I see every day at OpenAI and where we get to do at Microsoft. We know that at the Beijing Artificial Intelligence Institute, there is also this tremendous amount of talented people backed by an enormous amount of government support and funding. So you certainly have three participants right now at the forefront, we would say, of the largest models being created. And there will be others, and there will be startups. I mean, look, any day you take any area.
But the same technologies with authoritarian regimes, how much of concern is that to you? In a liberal regime, for example, with ChatGPT, there's so many times you put in a question, he says, I don't want to answer this. We've seen some of what China did during the pandemic in terms of Big Brother keeping very deep surveillance on its citizens.
I am constantly worried about how every area of technology gets weaponized. We live through this very directly, frankly, every day, defending Ukraine, defending not only against cybersecurity attacks, but what we call cyber influence operations. And we should constantly remain focused on ensuring this technology serves the human values we share, serves the interests of democracy, serves the opportunity for people to learn and think and express their views. So yes, absolutely.
Minister, before I wrap up, you were talking about using artificial intelligence in cybersecurity. Could you give us a sense of what's being done, what guardrails you have to prevent its misuse? Because I'm very concerned about you in government playing Big Brother over Rajesh, me and Indian citizens.
Couple of things. There is absolutely no concept of Big Brother government being the Big Brother in the country. We have brought out a very transparent and a very balanced data protection bill, which gives absolutely the right principles, sets the right principles for protecting individual privacy. So there is no question of that. We are committed to maintaining people's privacy. There is no Big Brother attitude in the government, right? Second, in cybersecurity, it's a very evolving very evolving area. Daily we find new types of threats. So the AI tools that we have developed are helping us thwart millions of attacks on a daily basis from certain geographies which are very obvious. Millions of attacks are daily coming, and that are successfully being countered today using some very modern, very advanced tools that we have deployed so far. Most of these tools are developed in the country, are very successful, and this is going to be taken further ahead because we have a large infrastructure which is today almost totally digitalized. The entire railway network is fully digitalized. The power sector is fully digitalized. The shipping lines are all dependent upon digital infrastructure. So we are taking forward the cyber security efforts in a very big way.
So we've had a deep and insightful conversation on the use of modern technologies, artificial intelligence in the context of governance, the advantages and the potential pitfalls. And the good thing is India is at the cutting edge of what's happening globally. Unlike the previous industrial revolutions where India was forever trying to play catch up, being at the forefront of the advantages and the potential pitfalls is great as an Indian. And Rajesh, we share that pride about the Indian tech sector. And the kind of champions that India has produced. And here's to more of that, hopefully in the hardware sector as well. Thank you so much, Rajesh Gopinathan, for joining us. Brad Smith, Minister Vaishnaw. It's a pleasure to have you at the India Pavilion for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rahul.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
News is about putting people first,
Just look at the queues right across.
about asking the right questions to those in power.
It takes no sides. माँ का दर्द एक दर्द कोई नहीं समझ सकता उस दर्द को.
It reveals, it heals.
Angry people came out on the streets.
Is this the kind of justice system we want in this country?
News is all heart and no hatred.
बिल्किस बानो आज क्या कहना चाहेगी आप?
हमारे साथ जो हुआ है किसी के साथ भी नहीं होना चाहिए.
Experience the news. With me, Rajdeep Sardesai, only on India Today.
Another good news for Shah Rukh Khan fans, as during the court proceedings at Delhi High Court regarding some changes, the makers of SRK's Pathaan have now revealed the OTT release date of this much anticipated spy thriller. The Siddharth Anand directorial will start streaming on Amazon Prime Video on April 25th on the condition that ahead of its release it has to be submitted again to get a recertification by Central Board of Film Certification.
हम ये मिशन साथ में कर सकते हैं. So are you in or are you out?
Also starred Deepika Padukone and John Abraham in key roles and is all set to hit cinemas on January 25th.
एक सोल्जर ये नहीं पूछता देश ने उसके लिए क्या किया, पूछता है वो देश के लिए क्या कर सकता है.
Entertainment Bureau, India Today.
जय हिंद.
If there is one film everyone's waiting for with bated breath, it has to be Pushpa the Rule. The next in the Allu Arjun starrer franchise, which will be in continuation of its first part. It will witness the clash between his character Pushpa Raj and antagonist Bhavar Singh Shekhawat.
Pushpa Raj.
Fahad Fasil is already a part of Pushpa franchise, and reports also suggest that the makers have approached Vijay Sethupathi for a crucial role in the film.
Pushpa and the floor and fire.
So if at all he comes on board, it surely is going to be double trouble for Allu Arjun's character Pushpa Raj. The film went on floors in August, and building up further excitement among fans, the makers shared behind-the-scenes picture from the sets of the movie. Speculations are rife that the sequel of Pushpa the Rise is being made on a whopping budget of 350 crore rupees, and the film is expected to release in the second half of 2023.
The one Indian state that's making a big splash here at the World Economic Forum in Davos is Telangana, being represented by a fifth-time Davos man, K.T. Ramarao. Welcome once again. It's great to have you back with us on India Today and Business Today. I want to start by asking you, KTR, about what Telangana has managed to achieve out of the World Economic Forum in Davos this year.
Well, Rahul, firstly, as you would understand, obviously you're a Davos veteran as well now. Relationships, especially when it comes to investment decisions, do not happen overnight. So they have to be nurtured. They have to be, basically handheld properly. So what Davos gives you, what the World Economic Forum gives you, is of course insights into what is happening across the world in various countries, and it also gives you insights into the most important things plaguing the world at large. But again, from my perspective as a Minister for Industry, Commerce, Information Technology, it gives me an opportunity to connect with the decision makers who take investment decisions in their own respective roles. Now, this time around, we've had significant success because, like I said, we've been meeting these people regularly. We've been, sensitizing them on the opportunities in India and primarily in Telangana. And this time, in fact, we're making some big ticket announcements, and we also have signed some very interesting MOUs. First one I'd like to talk about is the C4IR, the Center for Industrial Revolution focused on life sciences. Rahul, as you know, Hyderabad and Telangana is the life sciences capital of India and also by extension of the world, because we produce 1/3 of global vaccines, 9 billion doses. We also produce 40% of India's pharma. We have India's largest medtech park. So it was only logical that a life sciences center of the World Economic Forum had to be set up in Hyderabad. We're looking forward to some really cutting-edge work there, cell and gene therapy, precision medicine, etc. I really look forward to that because I think that is the next frontier to conquer. Also, a number of other things we can talk about.
No, but you pushed the T-Hub.
Yes.
That was a big passion project of yours. What are the key deliverables the T-Hub has actually managed to land so far? What's come out of the T-Hub?
Well, firstly, I'd say, T-Hub, when we conceptualized it, imagined it, back in 2014, the idea was to spur the innovation ecosystem and the government playing the role of an enabler. Today, T-Hub has not only created 57 other co-working spaces / incubators in the country. Yesterday, in fact, Startup India awarded it as the best incubator in the country. It's the world's largest incubator, technology incubator, with almost 500,000 square foot of space. Under one roof, you can have 2,000 startups working from. You have mentorship, you have venture capital access, you have access to all the regulators, and incorporating, innovating, and basically incubating. All three aspects covered. The biggest outcome of T-Hub, if you ask me, is the impact that it has been able to create. The first space tech company from India which sent a rocket into space is a T-Hub incubator called as Skyroot. Another company from Hyderabad, again, which came out of the startup ecosystem, is Dhruva, which sent nanosatellites into the orbit. So the kind of frontiers these young guys are conquering is extremely heartening, and of course, I'm looking forward to more and more unicorns and sunicorns coming out of T-Hub as well.
When it comes to the level of competitiveness between Indian states, the one thing Karnataka likes to point out frequently is that they get much more foreign direct investment than Telangana does. Despite the efforts that you're making, why is Hyderabad losing out to Bengaluru?
Well, I would say that is a misconception, because last year, according to NASSCOM, out of the 450,000 new jobs created in information technology, 150,000 came from Hyderabad. 146 were created in Bangalore. So the real numbers that matter are employment, and I would be happy to argue with my counterparts in Karnataka and elsewhere. The fact is, Hyderabad now contributes to 1/3 of IT jobs created in India. Our IT exports have gone through the roof from 57,000 crores in 2014 to 1,83,000 crores last year. So we are growing much higher than national average and much more than Bangalore as well. But my competition is not with Bangalore. In fact, I love Bangalore as a city. It's a city that I've actually visited very frequently. I have nothing against them. But the only thing is, of course, they've had a lot of first mover advantage. They started in the 80s. We started in 2000. So we're playing catch up. We're the Pepsi. They're the Coke. So we continue to play catch up. But my best wishes to them, in beating us and moving further up in the employment numbers as well.
How much does the relationship between the state of Telangana and the center, being fractious in the way that it is, impact your hopes of trying to develop Telangana economically the way you want?
If I have to sum it up in one word, one sentence, if the rest of India performed as well as Telangana did, we would have been a 5 trillion economy already. Because, our per capita was 1,24,000 rupees in 2014. With tenacious efforts, we've achieved 278,000 as of last year, which is the highest in the country for any state. That tells you how well we performed. Our GSDP was 5 lakh crores 2014. It is 11.55 lakh crores last year. Our growth rate is the highest in the country, 15% CAGR. Now, if the rest of India performed as well as we did, we would have been a 5 trillion economy, and despite COVID, and despite demonetization, despite an inimical union government. Now, despite all this, we have done this. Had there been support, like you were saying, we would have grown even faster.
But while you're highlighting the gross state domestic product numbers, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman was in Telangana recently, and she highlighted the high level of indebtedness, saying that each child is born with a debt of 1.25 lakh rupees on his head. The union government seems to think you and your government are taking Telangana towards financial ruin through public indebtedness.
Rahul, in fact, Mrs. Sitharaman should correct herself, because I think she was talking about India's debt and not Telangana's debt, because India's debt prior to Narendra Modi ji was 56 lakh crores. Between the 14 prime ministers before Modi ji, the complete debt of India, the national debt, was 56 lakh crores. One Modi ji, in the last 8.5 years, has raised India's debt single-handedly. He added another 100 lakh crores. So today India's debt is about 156 lakh crore. The per child 1,25,000 rupees she was talking about is pan-India, and that is primarily thanks to Nirmala Sitharaman and Narendra Modi ji. And the other thing I also wanted to point out... No, I'll tell you. Okay. The other thing I also want to talk about is, we are guided by FRBM Act. Since when did the centre respect FRBM Act? Ever since it was formulated or promulgated in 2003 or 4 as an act, the centre has flouted it 19 times in the last 19 years. Let me tell you, as a state, of course, we work under the larger rubric of India, so therefore we have no choice but to comply with the FRBM regulations. And they try and squeeze us once in a while, almost imposing sanctions like we're an enemy state or something. The point is, squeezing us dry and then calling us out saying you're doing something wrong is rather imbecile.
How are you being squeezed dry? Because you get your fair share of GST collections, for example, and all of what the centre has to give to the state. So how are you accusing the centre of squeezing you dry?
Well, two things. Firstly, Telangana has contributed 3,68,000 crores to the union kitty in the last 8.5 years. What we get back in the form of devolution and others is only 1,68,000 crores. So we contribute more to the nation than what we get back. But we don't have any grouse against it. We are not saying we should get back every single rupee and more. But when Nirmala Sitharaman comes to Telangana and says, PDS की दुकान में मोदी जी का तस्वीर क्यों नहीं लगाया, तो मैं भी पूछ सकता हूँ, पूरे हिंदुस्तान में तेलंगाना को थैंक्स कहते हुए आप भी लगा दो बोर्ड, क्योंकि हम 2 लाख करोड़ हमने contribute किया. She doesn't want to answer that. The other thing I also wanted to point out, see, we are guided by FRBM regulations. My debt GSDP is only 24%. India's national debt, GDP versus debt ratio is 65%. So who's she preaching? Somebody who's actually performing far worse than us. Somebody who's actually, given this country the highest inflation in 45 years, the highest unemployment in 30 years, comes and preaches to us, and with 100 lakh crore debt, comes and preaches fiscal prudence to us. No, but it's a joke.
Let's look at the RBI.
And how else are we being squeezed? The debt that is raised by the corporations in Telangana, state-owned corporation, is also unfortunately now rules are being redrafted, midway that is. Now they are saying even the corporation debt has to be factored under FRBM, and therefore the state's borrowings have to be curtailed. See, this sort of negative attitude and inimical attitude is only going to hamper the growth of the country. This is exactly why this whole dream that was shown, the 5 trillion economy, has not been fulfilled. 2022 तक हर किसी को घर मिलना था, हर किसी के घर में पानी आना था, हर किसी के पास बुलेट ट्रेन या एक ट्रैवल करने की सुविधा होनी थी, और उन्होंने ये भी कहा था कि 5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी हो जाएगा. क्या हुआ? 2023 में हम लोग बैठे. पूछो निर्मला जी से.
The Telangana satraps opens a new front. K. Chandrasekhar Rao has turned his hat in the ring to be the challenger to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Rao entered the race for 2024 with a massive show of strength in Khammam. The whole city turned pink as Telangana Rashtra Samiti, now named the Bharat Rashtra Samiti, cadres from across the state reached the venue to show their support.
మీకు భాష అర్థం కాకపోయినా చాలా చక్కగా ఇంతసేపు ఇంత ఓపికతోని ఇది ఈ దేశంలో ప్రబలమైన మార్పుకు సంకేతం అని చెప్పి నేను భావిస్తా ఉన్నా. భారతదేశం తన లక్ష్యాన్ని కోల్పోయిందా, దారి తప్పిందా? అయ్యా మోడీ గారు, మీ పాలసీ ప్రైవేటైజేషన్, మా పాలసీ నేషనలైజేషన్.
As KCR floated the new front, sounding the bugle from Telangana, he was joined by SP leader Akhilesh Yadav, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann and Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan.
पहली बार इस देश के अंदर एक उम्मीद की किरण जागने लगी है. इस देश के अंदर कुछ मुख्यमंत्री एक साथ आ रहे हैं, कुछ नेता अखिलेश यादव जी जैसे नेता एक साथ आ रहे हैं और अब हम सब मिलकर इस देश के विकास की चर्चा कर रहे हैं.
आज जरूरत है प्रोग्रेसिव नेताओं की, प्रोग्रेसिव सरकारों की. और मुझे उम्मीद है कि जिस तरीके से भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने देश को पीछे कर दिया है हर चीज में, हम सब मिलकर के जो मंच पर बैठे हैं और प्रदेशों में भी हैं, जो साथ मिलकर के काम करेंगे तो देश को एक नई सरकार भी और नए तरह का एक प्रोग्रेसिव एजेंडा दे करके देश को आगे ले जाने का काम करेंगे.
Unethical efforts to form governments in the states weaken the very foundations of our democracy, which is based on a multi-party system. Such a multi-party system is essential if we are to preserve and promote our diversities while remaining united as one.
As significant as the faces on the stage are the ones who were missing. Parties like the TMC, DMK, NCP, Shiv Sena and many others were either not invited or did not attend. This leads to the question, can an anti-BJP front without the principal opposition party, the Congress and its allies, take on the might of the Modi-Shah juggernaut? What the mega rally in Khammam proved is opposition unity remains a pipe dream. Bureau Report, India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
China's National Bureau of Statistics threw a surprise this week. The country's population fell in 2022 to 1.411 billion, down by 0.85 million people from 2023. The United Nations had projected India would overtake China's population this year. But the latest population data from China indicates India may well have done so. The United Nations had projected India's population to be 1.417 billion in 2022, higher than what Chinese announced this week. Conclusive evidence will come only when India conducts its census that was delayed by the pandemic. The potential implications for both nations are huge. China's loss can be India's gain. According to the UN estimates, over 27% of the country's population is between the age of 15 and 29. At 253 million, India is also home to the world's largest adolescent population. While India will have a growing workforce in the coming years, the challenge will be to ensure jobs for them.
We need a big skilling kind of activity and not just the general education level of the people. Currently, we do not have that kind of a skilled people like they had in China when they started this entire process of industrialization or opening up. So we need to look at some of these 2-3 sectors and also ensure that the education system produces skilled people in terms of this.
While policymakers have started putting reasonable emphasis on skill creation, recent government data shows around 45% of workforce is still employed in the agriculture sector.
This employment generation has to come to the fore in all policy matters in future. And we need to release people from the agriculture sector to other activities.
Experts believe that the younger the population, the better, but they also have to be part of India's workforce. And that will only happen if there are meaningful job opportunities for this population base. Policy interventions now will make sure and help India's demographic dividend not turn into a demographic nightmare. With Nasir Khan in New Delhi, Milan Sharma for India Today.
It's 2023, and India remains the sole shining star in the global economy. So what lies ahead as the Modi government prepares its last full budget before the 2024 general elections? Join the biggest names in business journalism, decoding the jargon with the biggest newsmakers. From the most credible, in-depth analysis of Budget 2023, tune in for Modinomics 2023 through the month. Only on India Today and Business Today Television, gold standard of business journalism.
Tonight,